And it's okay if you all talk until I get up there.
Okay. Talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. The charming thing about our live streams is people feel like they're walking into a conversation, in which we are. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to those of you in the live audience, and welcome to anybody who's watching us on YouTube or Facebook. I'm Mac McCullough. I'm a librarian here at Willard Library, and it's my pleasure tonight to welcome some representatives of the League of Women Voters of Michigan, who I'll introduce in a second. We're going to go over some information about the ballot proposals and election process and what you need to know. And I think a real important point here is to underscore the fact that this is not about advocacy for one position or another. This is about information and education. We hope that you ask questions, both you in the audience and those of you watching on YouTube or Facebook. Please chat and ask questions, and we'll post them up on the screen as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenters. We have Sue Roscoe, who will be our first presenter, and Karen Wiedemann. And those of you watching online, you see their names on your screen as well. So with that, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We're really excited to be to work in collaboration with Willard Library and with Mac, and they're doing a phenomenal job with the things they do, and have a website as well that's all on voting rights, and it's really, really great. So thank you. He's great. So I'm Sue Roscoe. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Calhoun County. And we want to welcome you to this brief overview about the three statewide ballot proposals that will be on your November 8th ballot. And because there's a heightened interest in election security these days, we'll also briefly cover Michigan election laws. So this presentation is brought to you by the League of Women Voters of Michigan, their education fund. We work to register and provide voters with election information through our election resource, vote411.org, and our printed voter guides. We do candidate forums and debates. It's been great this year as we were connecting with so many other nonpartisan groups in the community, and we're all working together to coordinate our effort and to really work on democracy, getting people registered and get people voting, sharing information. So this is an educational presentation. We're presenting both sides as best as we can. To respect your time and to get through the entire presentation, questions will be at the end. So just jot them down or remember them or whatever. Or there's paper notes up at the table if you want to write something, that'd be great. And can everyone hear okay? Everything's okay, all right. So what's on the ballot now? There's the House of Representatives, Governor, and Lieutenant Governor. We've heard lots of things of that on television for these offices. Secretary of State. There's also the courts and the universities, some of the things that we're not so informed about on how to vote, and that will be in our Vote 411 guide. You can find that. So other things on the ballot, though, is, as probably most of you know, that there's also many, like the commissioners' races, sometimes clerks, other local officials, and possibly some local ballot issues. So on the statewide ballot, there are three ballot proposals right now. And we're fortunate in Michigan to have a constitution that gives us two powers, gives the voters two powers that not all states have. 24 different states have these powers. The first one is a legislative initiative that gives the voters the right, if certain conditions are met, to initiate legislation or laws that can just be put into law if the legislature votes on that. And the second power is to amend the Michigan Constitution. So with a constitutional amendment, nothing can be altered without it coming back for the approval of the voters. Any action by the legislature to amend the Constitution must be placed on the ballot. There are three statewide ballots, as mentioned, and that would amend the Constitution. But all Michigan voters will be voting on these. We hope everyone will get out and vote and do that. The first one is transparency and term limits. Then there's Promote the Vote 2022. and reproductive freedom for all. If any of these pass, they go into effect 45 days after it was approved by the voters. So with that, we'll go to the first amendment proposal and have Karen Weideman.
Thank you, Sue. So the first amendment that's going to be on your ballot is 22-1, transparency and term limits. This proposal was placed on the ballot by a 2/3 vote of the Michigan legislature. Therefore, no signatures were required. This proposed constitutional amendment would require members of legislature, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and attorney general to file annual public financial disclosure reports after 2023. And this would include their assets, liabilities, income sources, future employment agreements, gifts, travel reimbursements, and positions held in organizations except religious, social, and political organizations. It would also require legislature implement but not limit or restrict reporting requirements. Lastly, it would replace current term limits for state representatives and state senators with a 12-year total limit in any combination between the House and the Senate, except a person elected to Senate in 2022 may be elected the number of times allowed when that person became a candidate. And so, should this proposal be adopted, yes or no? So the entire wording, I believe you have it, and it's also available at the State Board of Canvassers website and Transparency and Term Limits website. Currently, Michigan's legislature has failed to pass any legislation regarding financial transparency for elected officials. And Michigan's current legislative term limits permit 3 terms in the House of Representatives for 6 years, 2 terms in the Senate, 8 years, for a total of 14 years. So to give you context, Michigan has had term limits over the last 30 years. It was adopted in 1992 by the voters. In the 1990s, numerous states adopted term limits for state offices. 15 states have term limits now. Michigan is one of 5 states with lifetime limits. The 10 other states have limits on consecutive serving. And just for information, federal officers were not included in these limits because it would have to be an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So supporters of this initiative indicate that Michigan and Idaho are the only 2 states in the country that do not require personal financial disclosure in their state elected officials. This is a major reason the Center for Public Integrity ranks the state of Michigan 50th in the nation for transparency. The Michigan legislature has discussed various bills to require elected officials to report their finances. However, none have been passed. If this proposal is passed with respect to disclosures, beginning in 2024, elected state legislative and state executive officials must file annual financial disclosure reports on their income, assets, liabilities, gifts from lobbyists, positions held in certain organizations, and agreements on future employment with the Secretary of State. If this proposal is passed with respect to term limits, after 2022, persons could not be elected in the Michigan House of Representatives or Michigan Senate for terms that total more than 12 years. So a person could serve 12 years in the Senate, that would be 3 4-year terms, or they could serve in the House of Representatives 6 2-year terms, or whatever combination of terms that do not exceed 12 years. The 12-year lifetime limit would keep the benefits of term limits, but would also allow House members to focus on the work of legislation in the chamber where they're elected and relieve the pressure of having to seek out their next position. Supporters of this proposal include the American Federation of Teachers in Michigan, Femmes for Dems, League of Women Voters of Michigan, Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Michigan Education Association, Michigan Farm Bureau, Michigan Manufacturers Association, Michigan Realtors, Michigan Regional Council of carpenters and millwrights and the Sierra Club. There are more supporters than this that can be available at the Voters for Transparency and Term Limits.com. Opponents of this legislation say the critics of the proposal have attacked the rapid vote state lawmakers cast in May to place the measure on the November 8th ballot, calling it an ambush. They've argued the proposal is drafted by politicians and lobbyists who make money off their connection to government. And some people oppose term limits completely and would rather see them eliminated. Opponents of this include the Term Limits Defense Fund and the U.S. term limits. So that covers the first proposal. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sue to speak about Proposal 2.
Okay, Proposal 2 is a proposal to amend the state constitution to provide provisions regarding elections. This proposed constitutional amendment would recognize the fundamental right to vote without harassing conduct. It would require military or overseas ballots be counted if postmarked by election day. It would provide the voter right to verify identity with both a photo ID or a signed statement. It would provide voters the right to a single application to vote absentee in all elections. It would require state-funded absentee ballot drop boxes and postage for absentee applications and for ballots. Provide that only election officials may conduct the post-election audits. Require 9 days of early voting in person. It would allow donations to fund elections, which must be disclosed. It would require canvass boards certify election results based only on the official records of votes cast. Should this proposal be adopted? Yes or no? And the entire wording for the constitutional amendment is available at the State Board of Canvassers website or on the Promote the Vote 2022 website. Sorry. Currently, Michigan voters passed Promote the Vote in 2018, placing many voting rights in the Michigan Constitution. Michigan has various laws that regulate voting that can be changed by the legislature. Voting rights that are in the Michigan Constitution cannot be changed without a vote of the people. Supporters are saying that passing Promote the Vote 2022 will help ensure every single voice is heard and every voice is counted in every election, no matter what political party or candidate you support, where you live, or what you look like. Voting is critical to the integrity of our democracy, which is why our fundamental voting rights should be respected and protected in Michigan's Constitution. Promote the Vote 2022 would recognize the fundamental vote without harassing conduct. Promote the Vote 2022 will enhance election integrity and increase election security by modernizing how elections are administered to ensure every vote counts. By voting yes, you can ensure our elections are fair, accurate, and secure, and that election results are determined based on the votes of Michigan citizens whose identity is verified prior to counting their vote, whether they're voting in person or in the mail. Promote the Vote 2022 provides voters the right to verify their identity with a photo ID or a signed statement, which is the same as it is today. Promote the Vote 2022 will make voting more convenient and accessible for Michiganders of all backgrounds. Promote the Vote 2022 would require that military or overseas ballots would be counted if postmarked by Election Day. Promote the Vote 2022 provides voters the right to a single application to vote absentee in all elections. Some supporters include ACLU, American Federation of Teachers of Michigan, Common Cause, Equality Michigan, Gray Panthers, League of Women Voters of Michigan, the Michigan AFL-CIO, NAACP, and Voters Not Politicians. There are more supporters, and those are listed on the website for Promote the Vote 2022. Opponents claim the measure would open the doors to abuse. Opponents have been opposed to wide expansions of absentee voting because of security and cost concerns. Some of the opponents include Defend Your Ballot, Unborn Equity and Voting Integrity, Secure My Vote, and Stand Up Michigan. Okay, we'll turn it back to Karen for reproductive freedom.
Thank you, Sue. Proposal 22-3, Reproductive Freedom for All. Petitions to get this on the ballot turned in over 735,000 signatures. They needed 425,000. Proposal 22-3, a proposal to amend the state constitution to establish new individual right to reproductive freedom, including the right to make all decisions about pregnancy and abortion, allow state to regulate abortion in some cases, and forbid prosecution of individuals exercising the established right. This proposed constitutional amendment would establish new individual right to reproductive freedom, including right to make and carry out all decisions about pregnancy, such as prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, sterilization, abortion, miscarriage management, and infertility. Allow state to regulate abortion after fetal viability, but not prohibit if medically needed to protect a patient's life or physical or mental health. Forbid state discrimination in enforcement of this right. Prohibit prosecution of an individual or person helping a pregnant individual for exercising rights established by this amendment. Invalidate state laws conflicting with this amendment. Should this proposal be adopted, yes or no? So the entire wording for this constitutional amendment is available at the State Board of Canvassers website and the Reproductive Freedom for All's website. On June 24th, 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade decision in a 6-3 vote. Almost half century ago, the Roe v. Wade ruling was the basis for establishing a constitutional right to abortion. The case was Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. The new ruling by the Supreme Court means states must decide what the law will be regarding abortion. In Michigan, we have a 1931 law that bans abortions, but the courts have issued an injunction on that law, so currently abortions with certain restrictions are still allowed today. In 2020, 18% of all pregnancies in Michigan resulted in an abortion and 15% in miscarriage. Those under 18 years old accounted for 2% of all abortions in Michigan. That data is from the Michigan Department of Community Health. Supporters say this measure is needed because important medical decisions should be guided by a patient's health and well-being, not a politician's beliefs. But for far too long, politicians across the country have been fighting to restrict reproductive health care, and now they're gaining ground. Now that the U.S. Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade, a 1931 Michigan law could go back into effect that would make abortion illegal and threaten doctors with prison for up to 15 years for providing an abortion. In addition to ensuring access to a broad range of reproductive health care, this amendment would make sure no one goes to prison for providing safe medical care. When people are able to make decisions about their own reproductive health, including whether and when to have children, they have more control over their health and their economic security. Specifically, this measure will ensure that all Michiganders have the right to safe and respectful care during birthing. Everyone has the right to use temporary or permanent birth control. Everyone has the right to continue or end a pregnancy pre-viability, and no one can be punished for having a miscarriage, stillbirth, or abortion. Supporters of this include the American Civil Liberties Union of Michigan, American Association of University Women, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, Center for Reproductive Rights, League of Women Voters of Michigan, Michigan Nurses Association, Michigan Voices, National Council of Jewish Women, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Michigan. There are more supporters listed on the MichiganReproductiveFreedom.org site. Opponents of this initiative say the 1931 Michigan law that bans abortion except to save the life of the mother and makes it a felony to perform should continue to be the law. This amendment would repeal dozens of state laws, including our state's ban on tax-funded abortions, the partial birth abortion ban, and fundamentally alter the parent-child relationship by preventing parents from having input on their child's health. Opponents of this initiative include Citizens to Support Michigan Women and Children, Alliance for Life West Michigan, American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, Citizens for Traditional Values, Michigan Catholic Conference, Michigan Family Forum, Michigan Knights of Columbus, and the Right to Life of Michigan. And there are more opponents listed on the Support Michigan Women and Children.org site. Now we'll shift to the second focus of our presentation, as Sue will speak to the integrity of Michigan's voting process.
Okay, so we'll move to the second part of the presentation, the election processing in Michigan. We'll focus on three key factors: registering to vote, absentee voting, and certification of election. You can register to vote through the 15th day before the election. And so this year, you can register by mail, I should say. This year, that would be October 24th. And you can do it by mail, in person at Secretary of State office, city or township clerk's offices, voter registration agencies, voter registration drives, or online. And you'd have to have your driver's license or state ID and be verified as you register. From the 14th day before the election through 8 o'clock on election day, which would be starting October 25th, there's only one option, and that is to register in person at the clerk's office or satellite office with proof of residency. With absentee voting, the ballots became available on September 29th. And in person, you can visit your township or city clerk's office, submit a completed absentee voter application, and then the absentee ballot would be provided to you in person. You can vote the ballot right there and submit the ballot in person to the clerk. Or you can take that absentee ballot home, vote at home, and then drop it off or mail it back. By mail or to vote at home, you submit your completed application for an absentee ballot. You can do that by the mail. Absentee ballot is then provided and sent back to you by mail. You vote the absentee ballot and then mail the absentee ballot back or drop it off. And it's highly recommended that as of October 25th, you should drop it off in the drop box that's assigned to you with your clerk to avoid any problems with the mail and not arriving in time. And we like to remind people that they must sign the ballot envelope with their official signature in order for the ballot to be counted. And ballots have to be received by the clerk by 8 p.m. on election day. So why vote absentee? No lines. Busy people can vote when it's convenient. You don't have to try to get rides to the poll, and there's time to study the choices. For the August primary 2022, State Elections Director Jonathan Brader said around 2.1 million voters participated in the election, and slightly over half voted absentee. I have to add that Calhoun County was like 82nd out of 83 counties as far as voting in August. So we're really trying to get our county to vote, whichever way they wish. So once we're going to the County Board of Canvassers, once the election is over, the County Board of Canvassers is charged with certifying the election. Members include 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and they have staggered 4-year terms. They're appointed by the County Board of Commissioner from names supplied by the 2 parties. Their duties are that within 14 days of the election, they meet to review the election paperwork from the precincts. They certify the election results in the county, and it takes a majority in order to certify, so they need 3 out of 4. And then they send the election certification report to the State Board of Canvassers. The meetings, as they do this, are open to the public to observe, but not to participate. Trained League of Women Voter members observe meetings and report any irregularities. After it's sent to the State Board of Canvassers, they have 6 weeks after the election to certify. Again, they have 4 members, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, with staggered 4-year terms. These members are appointed by the governor from names provided by the 2 parties. Within 6 weeks of the election, they meet to review the certification reports from the counties, and then they certify the election results with, again, a majority vote. And similar to the county, the meetings are open to the public to observe, but not to participate. And the League of Women Voters does send observers and, again, report any irregularities. To sum up, we have 3 statewide proposals that will be on the ballot in November. We also talked about how to register to vote in Michigan, how absentee voting works in Michigan, and how elections get certified at the county and state levels. And so these are a few of the sites that you can refer to get information on voting, or there's a bunch on each one of those sites. One last thing with the Vote 411, before people cast their ballot, we encourage you to check out the League's online voter guide, the vote411.org. And we also have paper hard copies here. The hard copies are also in the libraries and at the clerk's offices. The hard copies list all of the state races. If you want local ones, you go to the digital site and you scroll down and put your address in, and it'll take you to what's on your ballot. And then we send questions to all of the candidates, and the ones who respond, you'll see the response, but you'll know what's on the ballot. But it's an excellent place for information on the ballot proposals. It tells you what a yes or no vote means. So you go back to the back of the guide of the hard copy or online, scroll all the way down past your candidates, and you'll find the proposal, and you just click on the little plus and it'll give you the further information. Okay.
So I'm sure we have some time remaining here to field any questions, and I would say too that Sue and I are not attorneys, and we feel like we're fairly well versed in the 3 proposals and certainly in the process of voting. And if there are questions that are asked that we can't answer, that we'll commit to tracking that down and getting in touch with you afterwards to let you know what it is that we found. But at this point, I invite questions from both our real and our virtual audience, if there are any.
Go ahead. I have 2 questions on proposal 2. There's definitely a cost with doing proposal 2. Is there an estimate on what it would cost and how it would be funded?
So the question was on proposal 2, which is the voter proposal, that there is a cost. And the question was, how much is that cost and how is that going to be funded?
It would be state funded, I'm sure. And whoops.
Why don't you stand up?
Okay. So it would be state funded. The one piece that it has in there that kind of makes up for it is it also includes that in-kind donation that has to be disclosed. I mean, right now, by in-kind, it could even be like when we would do voter education or churches or whatever would house polling places.
And that was my second question. Do you have an idea why that point was included in this proposal to allow donations? It strikes me as odd to allow donations. I wasn't sure what they were getting at there.
I think, well, what I have heard is that when, if that's taken out, some of the other issues that were brought forth were to have, to not allow that, not allow it to go to churches or whatever. And so then you've got the cost of paying for sites, public sites, in order to hold your elections. So it was kind of a give and take, I think.
Yeah, there was a promote the vote was one of the ballot, one of the petitions that was circulating, and secure the vote was another one. And secure the vote was the one that was restrictive in terms of the donations. So I think it was in response to that. Yes, you have.
On proposal 1, if I looked at the slides correctly, the current term limits are a total of 14 years, so it's actually dropping. It'll shorten term limits, correct?
That's correct. The question was on the first proposal that the current term limits are 14 years and the ones that are being proposed in this initiative are 12 years, and that is correct. It's actually reducing the total number of years by 2 years.
On proposal 3, we talked about this earlier. I was just looking online. It only covers reproductive rights, correct? It has nothing to do with, gender change, transgender care. It's only reproductive rights. That's all I saw. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the question was for proposal 3, which was the reproductive freedom for all, that just clarifying that the proposal indeed does not cover anything about gender, funding gender differences. What was the way that you phrased it?
Well, a lot of what you're seeing on television now says, minors can get gender changes without parental
right.
consent. That has nothing to do with this proposal, from what I'm seeing.
The gender changing isn't covered in this at all. This is strictly with respect to reproductive choice. Thank you for that question.
So the other one on there is the tax-funded abortions, because I think that proposal 22.3 said something about it would, any laws in conflict with that would be addressed, but tax-funded abortions aren't necessarily in conflict, so would that ban continue? Do we know?
So your question is, referencing for proposal 3, the tax-funded abortions, and you're saying that would not be necessarily in conflict with this proposal.
Curious.
I think that that's accurate.
So that, because there was, one of the opponents said that would now be allowed, and I'm just curious because I didn't read into that would be.
My understanding that federal funding has never been allowed for abortion care. They might, Planned Parenthood, places like that have sources, but I worked in a federal facility and we could not use federal funding to subsidize abortions.
So there's no change in that federal funding is not used to subsidize abortions, that Planned Parenthood, other organizations have been actively helping in funding abortions, right? So that would not be a change.
That's my understanding of how it used to be, yes.
Just curious.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else from our virtual audience?
No, just a thank you for the summary. Maybe a couple of people advocating for their side, but this is informational,
Right.
and
That's
I didn't want to start an
Right.
argument, so.
No.
Right, okay.
We just say we'd like people to take the time to actually read the proposals. We have the handouts, and I'll put those up on we have a Facebook page and on the League of Women Voters of Michigan. You can see that. You can research stuff it's all listed in the voter guides online or the hard copy. And we really would like to see people taking the time to research and read the factual information and what's in there, not just what they're hearing from whatever sources.
Right. So we'd like to say thank you again to Willard Library for providing the venue and for Mac McCullough for helping to organize it and the tech team here. Well, you've got the voter guide right there at the library.
That's right. I just wanted to say that we do have some of these materials at the library that you can pick up. This is the League of Women Voters 411 guide, right?
Mhm.
And so we have lots of copies of these and a brochure on Know Your Rights to help explain election. And as I mentioned at the top of the program, we do have on our website a list of all the clerks and voter information and places where you can get information. So if you have any questions, please avail yourself of that.
And
Thank you.
we're more than willing as the league, if you email us, we have our addresses and things up there to help look up some of that information as well. Yeah, but it's out there. We just need to research it.
Oh, and did you tell them about
I
this?
didn't yet.
Ah, yeah, so we also, for those of you who are looking for media resources, and a lot of times it feels like you're being told what to think, this is a handy guide that we'll have at the information desk if anybody wants to take a look at and see where various providers fall on the spectrum, a little bit right, a little bit left, all the way down to the extreme right, extreme left, but also just their credibility. So, just a little bit of news literacy in this age where it's kind of hard to know who's telling the truth and who is spinning. So,
And you also have the misinformation, and we have it on our Facebook page as well. Ways that you can look up if information is true or not. So you're going on facts, not rumors or whatever.
well, thank you both for coming, and thank you to our audience. And if you have some friends that haven't seen this, please feel free to share the link. It'll be on our YouTube page and our Facebook page forever.
So,
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Do you, as a precinct captain, do you see problems with having to show